Charlotte Hornets have won 6 games in a row, and the rest of the NBA is starting to pay attention. What's going on, guys? If you don't know me, my name is Will Udy. I cover the Hornets and the NBA full-time, and I really just wanted to start making these videos as a way to kind of come on here and share some of my thoughts, my opinions, what I'm seeing, what I'm noticing around the team as I cover them, as I go to these games and practices and all that sort of thing. Typically, my lane is more of writing, to be honest with you. I'm not super used to doing video stuff. Done a little bit of short form video, but sort of jumping into the long form video side of things here. So honestly, I want to keep this pretty informal, unscripted. I really don't plan to come on here and just like, talk off of a script or anything like that. I don't plan on making any real camera cuts or anything like that, unless I do make a mistake or something. So I'm excited to get into this. And with that being said, let's go ahead and do it. Right now, it's pretty impressive that the Hornets are the talk of the NBA, at least from my perspective. It seems like for so long, and really just forever, the Hornets never get talked about. Right? It's either the small market thing, or they're not winning games, or both. I mean, of course, Kemba Walker was the time the Hornets were talked about probably the most in the last 20, 30 years. And now they're the talk of everybody. If you go on Twitter right now, everybody is talking about how they don't want to play the Hornets in the first round. Pistons fans, Knicks fans, Celtics fans, pretty much all the posts I'm seeing are like, hey, stay away from this team in the first round. We don't want to play them. And I think that's a fair opinion to have. I want to touch on that more a little bit later, but first of all, just acknowledging the absurdity of the fact that the Hornets are front page in the NBA right now. That is something special. Hornets fans relish this because you don't know how long this is going to last. But with that being said, we need to recap the last 2 games now. This is being recorded on Thursday, March 5th, day before the Miami Heat game at home. So we're coming off of the Tuesday win at home against the Mavericks, and then, of course, last night, the road win in Boston. 2 great wins, right? So Tuesday, you have, what could be like a letdown game if you lose that one for sure. Mavs coming into town with no Cooper Flag. And we didn't know Flag wasn't going to play up until game time, right? We were excited to see the rookie matchup with the 2 Duke rookies, but didn't get part number 2 of that. It was pretty amazing the first time. But the Hornets took care of business, right? Win by 27 in a game where they really didn't play super, super well. I think Charles Lee said as much post-game. He said the last couple of games, we've kind of been able to get by, like not playing our best basketball. And he said he's excited to see them get tested against a top-notch team on Wednesday. And we all know how Wednesday went. That was probably like a 100th percentile type of, performance from the Hornets against second seed team on the road. So I think as much as any of us are impressed by the Hornets, they just keep blowing our minds, don't they? I want to go back to a specific moment from that Tuesday game against the Mavs. It was when Max Christie shot that corner 3 and really bricked it super hard off the side of the backboard. Eric and Dell were making fun of him on the broadcast. That was funny. But that was a moment that made me think of something. It kind of, in a weird way, drew me back to the last 3 seasons. I've been credentialed for the last 3 seasons, right? And in the last couple seasons before, obviously, the winning really started happening this season, man, there were so many games where it was like nothing is going the Hornets' way tonight. If you're a Hornets fan, I know you know what that means. I know what that feels like, right? So many games where it's like they can't do anything right tonight. It's a really unfortunate outcome, right? That moment felt like one of those moments to me, if that makes sense at all. Like Max Christie hits the side of the backboard, and in my mind I go, that seems like something I would have said 2 years ago in a random February or March game against whoever, where it's like the Hornets can't do anything right tonight. So I don't know. In a way, it's kind of cool to see like that kind of thing happen to an opponent where it's like nothing can go right for the Mavs tonight. I think the Mavs hit 3 threes the entire game, right? So just like a nice change of fate overall from the Hornets' perspective. We need to get into talking about the record, 16-3 over the last 19 games. That's obviously an absurd number. And I want to also approach this from the perspective of a conversation I had with a couple of my media friends while we were sitting down by the court a couple nights ago. So we talked about like what happens when this team encounters some adversity, right? And really in my mind, I said, well, I think this team has already shown how they respond to adversity. Because, when you have the brawl against the Pistons, you lose Miles, you lose Musa, and then boom, you got Houston and Cleveland on the schedule. Uh, they lost those games, but that was like the first part of it, right? The second part was, all right, you lost these games without a couple of your key guys. Now you've got them back against Washington, I think was the next game. And it's like, how do you respond, right? Do you let your process slip up because now you've got a couple, losses under your belt that you wouldn't have had? Do you make excuses? And they clearly showed that no, that's not what this team does at all. They won 6 in a row now. How did they respond to adversity? They went out and won 6 in a row. It's like, this is what Charles Lee talks about every time he gets up in front of the podium when he says, hey, we just focus on our daily process. We focus on daily improvement, and, we don't worry about any of that stuff. But like the other day, I asked him if they were checking the standings, if they've even had the temptation to check the standings. And he was like, no, absolutely not. We stay true to our process because we know that's what has gotten us here. And I thought that was a really mature answer because it's like he's practicing what he preaches, right? It's like, hey, we got this far. We're not just going to kick our feet back and celebrate now that we're 500 again. No, he knows what the ceiling of this team is. And I think Hornets fans know too, right? Like 16-3 over 19 games, it's ridiculous. If they played this way from the start of the season, right? Of course, the injury piece, if they had been healthy from the start of the season, who knows what this team could be doing, right? So I thought that was a good talking point of like, this team really is sticking to its guns. And like, if the results hadn't been coming, there'd be a lot of questions about, is the daily process thing working? But now that the results are coming, it's undeniable. I mean, Charles Lee was catching a lot of heat earlier in the season, undeservedly so, in my opinion. And now he's really been vindicated. I don't think anybody's really heavily criticizing Charles Lee anymore. Frankly, I think he needs a little bit more votes in the Coach of the Year race. Let's go into talking about one other thing Charles said the other night was getting contributions from a lot of guys on the roster. It was something Grant kind of echoed after him too. A stat I saw today that I thought was interesting that played into that was that the Hornets lead the league in rookie minutes by like a wide margin, which is really impressive. But it makes a lot of sense when you think about, obviously, Khan, but Sion and Ryan as well. All those guys have played like big roles on this team as they're winning. And even Grant talked about Sion being like this kind of all-encompassing, like heart of the team kind of guy. And I'm like, wow, what a compliment for like a first-year player. I mean, he comes in the early parts of the season, he's hitting every three he takes. And he hasn't obviously kept that up, but he's certainly been very impactful and impressive for the vast majority of the season. And to have a veteran like shout you out like that, I think that's really impressive. I also want to touch on something that Miles Bridges said after the Portland game on Saturday. He said he doesn't mind taking a back seat. And I think that just shows him being a great leader, right? Like, he's been a 20-point per game scorer for the last 3 seasons. Like, he could easily come in and just demand the ball and want to get his numbers. But he's been there. He's done that. He's like, hey, I get it. Like, Con, Melo, Brandon, we got 3 crazy shooters. We got 3 crazy versatile offensive players. Why don't I, like, help them and, like, do what I can for them, play to their strengths? I'm still going to be an impactful player on my own right. I thought that was a really good thing as well. It's definitely Miles taking a back seat. I mean, it's even something he mentioned before last season. I remember asking him what he expected his role to be going into the 24-25 season. And he said, hey, I expect Brandon and Melo to do most of the scoring, and I'm going to help them out where they need to. So I think he's kind of had that mentality. He obviously stepped up last year when Brandon went down, had to do some more scoring again. But I just love that mentality, and it just shows, especially since he's the oldest guy on the roster, like he's taking his role seriously, and he's really being a leader. Of course, it's not surprising. Everybody on the roster pretty much calls him a great leader. We got to talk about the signature move from Melo, the sidestep 3. I want to give a shout out to my buddy Matt Alkiza. He pointed out that this should be considered Melo's signature move. I got to agree with him. It seems like every game the Hornets win where they're blowing somebody out and it's going viral on social media, there's at least 1 or 2 of those from Melo. So we definitely need to take note of that. That is should be officially considered his signature move. And then as I woke up this morning, probably the coolest stat I've seen this week was that the Hornets have won 6 in a row, all by 15 or more points, and that hasn't been done since 2017-2018 Golden State Warriors. So Hornets fans were having fun earlier this season comparing, Khan, Brandon, and Melo to KD, Steph, and Clay. And it was just kind of a fun, playful thing at that point. But now it's like, wait a second. This actually has some real juice to it, which I think is amazing in more ways than one. The last point I want to address is, and Hornets fans might disagree with me on this, that's okay. Talking about this team is going to be dangerous in the first round. Other teams won't want to play the Hornets in the first round. I definitely agree, right? The Hornets are going to be a tough out in the first round no matter who they play. There's definitely tougher matchups. Like Cleveland, Detroit, I would say would be tougher matchups for this team in the first round. It's probably, at this point, I think we're getting to the point where could be dangerous in the first round, right? Saying that is almost like underselling this team a little bit, because I think they've shown you with 16 wins in 19 games, they're more than just having a hot stretch, right? This team is legitimately very good. And I actually think that there's a possibility this team could really make a deep playoff run, second round, maybe even Eastern Conference Finals. And maybe I'm dreaming a little bit. I know Hornets fans on Twitter have been saying, hey, we got to keep our expectations down a little bit. Don't overhype it. I get it. I understand. I'm just trying to say, everybody's been saying this team is the 2025 Pacers for a month now, and I'm kind of starting to see the vision on that. So that's a couple honest thoughts. I know I was kind of all over the place, but those were a few things I wanted to just chat about with the Hornets. Like I said, I've been covering this team for 3 seasons now in person, and I really do believe this stretch is something special. I think that's something we can all agree on. If you want to follow along for the rest of this run, some insider access. Like I said, I try to make it to many of the games, practices as I can. Go ahead and hit subscribe below. I'll be here for all of it. And if you want some longer reads, some more in-depth analysis, I linked my Substack down in the description. Once again, I'm Will Udy. Thank you guys for following along, and thanks for watching.